Hey, this is David Wolinsky back with another interview from the audio archives of NoDon'tDie.com. This time I'm bringing to you the second half of my conversation with Chelsea Howe, who at the time was creative director of EA Mobile. We spoke on February 11th, 2015. If you'd like to read a full transcript of this conversation, you can check the link below in the description, and also down there you'll see a link to my Patreon, where your support helps me continue with this project. Thanks.
This is a terrible segue, but let's talk about zombies and pirates. I mean, obviously, like, that's just like a placeholder crutch for any type of character, but so I guess I'd be curious to hear, like, what bugs you about them, other than, I'm guessing, the fact that they're so seemingly omnipresent.
Yeah, it's how much attention they're getting and how lazy the people are who use them, and how much it's it feels like someone went to a marketer and was like, what do people like? And they put, a list of, 100 words on a map, and people circled ninja, pirate, zombie, and they just became so, like they kept on bubbling up, and it was just like this self-realizing prophecy that now everyone just loves pirates and ninjas and zombies, and so few people actually take the time to make their pirates or their ninjas or their zombies interesting and unique. Even The Last of Us, which was a really cool game and did a lot of really fantastic stuff. Its zombies still really just felt like zombies, and that's really unfortunate. And I wish that we weren't relying so much on those tropes, because I think that relying on tropes like that also means that we're not... if you think about what Gene Roddenberry did with Star Trek, every alien species had some new thing that examined under, a microscopic lens some facet of who we are as humans and made us think about ourselves. And when we just use tropes in our games, a trope is just an excuse not to think. It's like a piece of candy that you've already tasted and you know you like it and good for you. And we just lose so much nuance, and we lose so much of the meaty stuff that makes me love, certain movies or films, like that depth of human investigation, and introspection. And we miss out on that completely because the marketers tell us, hey, people like ninjas. But then if they like ninjas, you have to put in what people think of as ninjas, which is already this solved problem.
Well, so speaking of solving the problem, what do you think it will take for that to change? Other people have asked me this in these interviews, and it's very snotty and simple to be like, well, people should just stop buying them. But it seems like people just keep buying them, so it must be what people want, right?
Well, okay, so there's the want-need dichotomy, right?
Sure.
And that's at the core of this, because it's a known quantity. It's a candy that I know I like. Whenever I go to the gas station, I always buy Reese's peanut butter cups, because that's what I know and that's what I'm familiar with. And people don't like change, and change makes them uncomfortable, and growing and thinking makes people uncomfortable. So why don't we all just have, what's the show from Idiocracy? Ow, my balls.
Oh my God. Yeah, I talk about that. Well, continue, because I've been talking a lot about that movie, but please continue, and then I have something to say, and so I'm curious where that'll take us. But yeah, ow, my balls, yes.
I think that's where your responsibility as a creator comes in. I think we need to have a response, and that sounds kind of shitty, holier than thou. But,
it's right.
But,
Well, because look at what look at what not taking up that responsibility has brought us.
Yeah, and it's just we need to find better arguments to fight for this. Because I think for a lot of creators, it's hard to get in front of those executives who want known quantities and who want predictable results, and to fight for, we need to make people think, and to know that your user testing surveys are going to come back and the data is going to say people just want ninjas to be black robe hooded figures that throw shiny stars. And even if you know that that's a terrible trope and that it's a horrific mangling of history and culture and everything, the data is going, like, you have to fight that. Like, those are very, very real fights, and they're very hard. Like, it's very hard to figure out how to make an argument against data. And so much of that just comes from experience and respect and prestige, and quite frankly, most of the people who have acquired the level of prestige that's needed to overwrite, hard data from your marketers, that's still a really homogenous group.
Well, that didn't take us back to idiocracy, but I mean, like, is this just a case of just like big games are just getting way too big to take risks? Just a very broad question, but
I go back and forth on this, and I was feeling super cynical until 6 days ago when Grow Home came out. Have you heard about Grow Home?
I have.
So
please explain. Thank you.
So Grow Home is a what I would consider an indie game. It has the heart and soul. Like, when I talked about priorities, Grow Home is a game that was made by a AAA studio without a priority of making money. It was designed from the ground up to be a technical experimentation for procedural animation. And you can see the innovation and the ingenuity and the heart that developed without that constraint of this has to make money, and all of the how is it going to make money tests and metrics that you have to live up to. And so this was designed to be an internal Ubisoft game, really just a test, and it gained so much popularity within the studio that someone said, what the hell, let's put it on Steam. And to me, that is it makes me so hopeful and so sad. It makes me hopeful because it happened, and that means that it can happen again. And it makes me sad because it shows that burden of this needs to be designed to make money can be so counter to innovation. I was about to say creativity, but that's total bullshit. It's counter to innovation. It's not counter to creativity.
How do you define those two? I'm sorry to be all snooty, but
no, that's what this is for. To me, innovation is about the creation of something novel, something that hasn't been done before or seen before, something that is wholly unique. Whereas creativity can be about combining existing things. It can be about solving known issues in new ways to get to the same results, to do things faster, to do things in a more robust way, to make systems more flexible. There's a lot of ways that you can be creative even when you're just, quote unquote, cloning a game. Less opportunities to be innovative.
Mm-hmm. So I want to just jump over to the thing you feel like no one else is talking about. And so you mentioned a couple of things here, which I copied and pasted your email before we hopped on Skype 40 times before we got it working. But let's see. So you have a couple things here. Games that are meant to last decades plus. Well, we can talk about all these or just one. Do you have a preference?
What are you most intrigued by?
I'm just trying to think of what I've heard people not talk about at all. Like, are you talking about World of Warcraft and stuff, or?
So I think WoW is an interesting. WoW gets into the social variable aspect, which is what I think is most intriguing. But to me, it's even looking at games like chess and games like sports and seeing what it is about the kind of higher level systems of those games that make them last for ever and ever and ever and ever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I guess
I just mean a few millennia, but imagine if Farmville was available in 3012. That would be pretty cool.
Well, is there any reason to think it won't be?
Well, I mean, we get into the dark human probability of, mutual destruction, likely.
What's going to happen to us? Is this? Go ahead.
If you look at the number of warheads that are unaccounted for, like atomic warheads that are unaccounted for, it's petrifying.
Isn't that why we play Farmville, so we don't think about that?
Oh, that's what we could talk about.
Well, but I think that's kind of related. I mean, because like I think you were talking about things like Go or chess or things that have lasted centuries and truly are, I think, looked back in time as like, unassailable, unquestionably cultural artifacts, and yet we're 60 years into games and it's still not really, games are not as mainstream as all of us in games think they are. But like the way I read this was in a video game context of like games that are meant to last decade plus where, I mean, I don't know if World of Warcraft is the first game that has lasted, in its, it's having its own lifespan. And I think that like, I guess Second Life also, but then we can get into semantics of what a game is, and I'm not interested in that. But like, no one ever sets out to design a game that's intended to last for decades, right?
Yeah, not to my knowledge, and that's like something that excites me to no end. Because again, with the free-to-play thing, like free-to-play games are infinite games by nature of their business model. They're intended to last forever. And oftentimes they do that. There's, whether for content dependency and the content runs out, or the cost of creating content becomes too high, or server maintenance, or infinite reasons. And it'd be really interesting to think about what it would take to keep something alive for so long. Because I looked into this, and there are several MUDs from like the 90s that are still running. And that was super curious. And there are like something like Neopets. Like Neopets is still running. And so that's absolutely a game. And, then you have things like Club Penguin, which is sort of like a game meets social network. Like it's a virtual world that you can exist in, I think. And like, what is it about those? Is it, like what makes those last? Is it the sense of place? Is it the fact that, you're interacting with people? And I mean, that's always my answer. Because my big shtick is that humans are the ultimate infinite content generators. And that, even the same two people who have been playing chess their entire life, every time they sit down, it's a slightly different game. Because, you're thinking about the last game you played, and you've probably learned something from that. But they've also probably learned something from that. And what did they learn? And I was rambling. So.
No, it's good. No, I'm just thinking like, just that just there are still MUDs running, but also like So a couple of years ago, I did a column called "Abandoned," and it was all about going back and visiting old MMOs that are sort of just fallen out of favor. And so like I went like 5 years ago and I played Diablo 2, but I also like went and I played like Hello Kitty online, a lot of just like these odd things that are in that space you're talking about. And this was pre, World of Warcraft, pre that notion, although if MUDs are still around, it's different. So then I'm curious, like, why do you think those MUDs are still running, but Diablo 2 is like a complete ghost town?
Yeah, those are creepy. I've been to a lot of. Oh, that's like an entirely new topic. Is like the feel like digital presence and like ambient social awareness and how that changes a space over time. Like it's already happened on mobile. Like if you go to any of the games that are designed to have like active player bases, like Dry is a great game. It's a beautiful game, and I'm never going to beat that because I will never get the number of players I need. Even Journey already, it's really hard to find people. Even Assassin's Creed Unity. I went into Assassin's Creed Unity last weekend just to dick around, and I wanted to go on some of the social missions, and it like kept on pairing me with like this one guy, and there was no one else. This was like on a Saturday. And like that's how quickly things have come and gone. And it's
Do you think it's accelerating the pace at which people piece out on digital worlds?
Attention spans are just, decaying at a terrifying rate.
Yeah, I mean, I used to joke. Well, I joke fairly increasingly these days that I should just start a website of just a list of things predicted in Idiocracy, and we'll just check a box every time one of them comes true. Because I feel like increasingly that movie has proven to be more of like a prescient mockumentary than like a comedy.
That's just the time I watched that. I was terrified. Like that was a horror movie to me the first time. Because I could see it all playing out, and I was like, holy shit.
Well, but then so maybe what we're talking about is sort of a way to turn things around. If we start thinking that, a game should be expected to last a decade, not necessarily that you'll be playing it solidly for a year, but if you start thinking about it as a creator, that like people will be coming back to this over the course of a decade, I have a feeling it would be treated far less disposable than most games are. I mean, because I think the scary thing is like, whether it's 99 cents or $60, it seems to be just as disposable for many consumers.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. No, it's totally true.
Well, that just scares the shit out of me. Because like, then why make a $60 game? I think why make a $60 game if you just could do a 99-cent game? Why do a 99-cent game? People say it's too expensive and just too free. Like it feels like there's a large race to the bottom that's going on there, and so what I worry about is like, we talked a little bit about how hard it was to get a job in the industry. I wonder if people are wondering about like, how plausible is it to shift any of this or to make a mark or to do something different rather than stick to the tropes? And I don't want to sound all doom and gloom, but it does seem like you look around at a lot of places. Even just I try to check Steam every day just seeing what's out there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's part of where I'm looking, but then I go to like itch.io or Warp Door, mm-hmm. and it feels just as hard to navigate. Like there's just so much stuff out there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I don't really have a point, but
no, it's true. And all the people I've talked to,
mm-hmm.
and in my personal experience as a designer, like essentially what we're optimizing for now is the amount of delight that players can get for the least amount of time and effort. And you can define effort financially or in terms of attention, whatever. Mm-hmm. And a natural result of that is that all games become free to play. And it's just not like free to play doesn't necessarily need to be what we think of as free to play now. It could be more subscription model. It could be something entirely different. But as we go towards, delight over time and effort, the least amount of effort is free. So I too am not super hopeful about the future. Like, I hope that there's always going to be enough people like me who just cherish that unrestricted open world sandbox style play where you can get a premium game and sit down and play it for 20 hours straight and just like melt into it. But I haven't played a premium game that didn't have some free-to-play elements in it in a really long time. Like all the new Assassin's Creed do, the new Dragon Age did. What was I playing before that? I don't know about Shadows of Mordor. I gave up on Shadows of Mordor too early. Too much.
Why?
Fighting and killing and gore. Also like, hey, look, you have a wife and a child. Oh, we killed them. Your character is now developed.
I got about as far as where it said, like, press X to something, your wife, and I think I was like, okay, I know where this is going. So
I think that was the crouch tutorial.
Yeah.
To surprise your wife.
So you explained why we were laughing before. I have a feeling this will probably wrap us up. Can you explain why we just laughed again?
Well, we laughed because the press X to whatever is a huge trope of people trying to add interesting forms of interactivity in a very shallow way. Popularized by Jason in Heavy Rain, and then recently by Kevin Spacey in one of those brown war games. You should look that up, and if it's one by EA, you should make me say the right name.
I will. Actually, I'm glad you brought that up, but I feel like that's not going to be a super great ending to this. Make sure I said the right one. But it's just so silly to hear that, because I've said that in other interviews. It's like I talked to a lead designer, and she was talking about. She said the same thing. She was like, "Oh, just one of those brown war games," and I was like, "The sad thing is, I don't even know which one you're talking about."
Yep.
It doesn't even refer to a specific series.
Nope.
So then what gives you hope? That'll probably be a better thing to end on. But then I actually want to ask you something about Kevin Spacey, believe it or not.
I love that man.
Mm-hmm.
What gives me hope? What?
Yeah.
I am a realistic optimist by nature, and I found that in order to survive in the game industry, you have to believe that it gets better, and believing in it often makes it happen. We didn't talk about it, but I got super down on energy, and I was like, this is horrible. This is the most artificial constraint I've ever seen in games. It's a terrible UX, and it's gotten better. Like, a lot of the games that are making money and staying financially successful are moving away from energy. And we can see that as free-to-play becomes ubiquitous, people are demanding better free-to-play. And so you're seeing free-to-play start to adapt, start to get better, start to be less pinchy, and that's super cool. And I think that as people see that the games that get into the top charts are ones that have significantly novel features, we're going to start investing a little bit more in novelty. And because of what it means to play, and I have all sorts of philosophical love tied up in what it means to play and what it means for humans to be at play.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to wind up... I think we're just going to see a positive trajectory. You know, as negative as it has seemed, if you compare where we are now to where we used to be, like thematically and content-wise, there's so many people doing so many interesting things. I think it's going to get better. I think it is getting better. And it's going to continue to get better.